Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Wisely Spiritual Podcast. We are doing the moon forecast for the full moon in Virgo for February 2021. I'm Kendall Shawhan, and this is my friend and co-host, Amy. Amy, do you want to give a little shout out?
Sure. My name's Amy Amonette, and I'm an intuitive energy coach, healer, and I also have been facilitating a moon circle group with some wonderful women for a couple of years now. So this is like a big kind of passion for me, and I'm so excited to be able to be here and talk about this moon with all of you.
I love it. I love talking about moon energy. It's such a I can't say it, feminine thing, but
It really is. I mean, there was like an article I came across recently that was about kind of one of the first, it was an archaeological thing, and they found a bone and it had 28 days or 28 marks in it. And they believe that it was a woman who was either tracking her cycle or tracking the cycle of the moon. And it's so interlinked and so part of, who we are, especially as women. I know it's not all women who listen to this, but I primarily work with women. And so it's just such a core aspect of our spirituality and our humanity and how we, are in this world and the cycles we go through.
Oh, I totally agree. Once I personally became more connected with that moon cycle. I feel like it changed my life. So I'm so happy. And I hope others get connected with it if they're just learning about, following the moon cycles and how it interacts with their life. It's really important to be aware of what's going on, with the moon cycles as well as the rest of the astrology that's happening.
Yes, very much so.
All right, let's talk about the full moon that's coming up.
Yeah, this full moon, I'm so excited about this one, especially because we've had such crazy energy recently. And I think that it's this moon that's coming in on February 27th. It's a full moon in Virgo. And it's just a really nice kind of reprieve from a lot of the crazy chaotic energy that we've had, especially with last full moon that was so much Aquarius energy. And that was it's very mental. It takes a lot to process all of the mental aspects and that forward thinking and just trying to navigate like what direction everything is going to be moving in this new way. And so now we get to move into this, we've just entered Pisces season, and Pisces is a water sign. And it's also the 12th sign of the zodiac, and it's ruled by Neptune. And so it kind of always has this ethereal quality to it. I tend to think of Pisces as kind of being a little otherworldly. They're very intuitive, very connected to spirit. They have kind of this gentleness to them. And they're not necessarily the most grounded sign. And sometimes if you're a really grounded person and you're dealing with a Pisces and you don't understand where they're coming from, that can be kind of frustrating energy to deal with because they can go from, point A to point Z and miss all of the in between sometimes. And you're like, where are you? But they're some of the like best people I know. And so we have, we've moved into this Pisces energy, and it gives this very kind of needed emotional vibe that we haven't really felt in a while. The last water sign we were in was Scorpio, and Scorpio energy can be kind of dramatic. So Pisces is a little more lighthearted. I tend to think of Pisces as kind of like the epitome of a Disney princess. It's like in their world, everything should be rainbows and singing, and it's a fairy tale ideally. But of course, with full moons, when we have a full moon, it's because the sun and the moon are in opposite signs from each other. Um, and this full moon is in Virgo.
Hmm.
And Virgo and Pisces do have some really commonalities to them. They're both very feminine signs. Virgo is often represented by the maiden, from the maiden mother crone, kind of triple goddess entity. Um, and it's also, in a way, almost like um, the best representation of the female, you know, in some ways.
Hmm.
Um, so it's, but then there's also, I mean, of course, you look at with every sign, we always talk about how there's positive and negative traits.
For
And so
sure.
some of the negative traits about Virgo, I mean, I don't want to say negative because they're not always negative. They definitely have their purpose. But Virgos definitely are much more realistic than the Pisces energy is, you
Yeah,
know.
Pisces is very dreamy, and you know,
Mhm.
I think of them as being able to get lost in um, some of that like dream world.
Yes.
Well, and I told you earlier that I had pulled the Seven of Cups. I did my spread for Pisces, the Pisces energy coming up, and that was the prominent card for it. And it was really, when I see that card, that always triggers the reminder of, hey, don't let yourself get lost in either your illusions or dreams or the fears that you kind of project into your life, instead of really getting to the work that needs to be done. And so the work part kind of triggers my Virgo. Like,
Yes.
when I hear
Those are
that.
very practical and realistic. And Virgo also has very high expectations for themselves. And sometimes that can come across as them being critical of other people. And it's really more that they expect a lot from themselves, and in turn they expect a lot from other people, and they have very definite ideas of how things should be done, and they stick to their beliefs like no other. Like if their belief system is set, and they're going to abide by that, and there's a lot of structure to their lives and a lot of organization. And then so in those ways it's so different from how Pisces operates.
Yes, Virgo
um,
is a little more rigid.
oh yes. And so when you have this kind of like ethereal
Uh-huh.
aspect from Pisces, and then you have this like, no, you have work to do, and better make your lists and check them twice, and get everything done and do it the proper way. You can have these like clashing kind of energies coming at each other. So that's kind of what we're experiencing with this moon. um,
Oh, joy.
yeah, but
I think it's going to be good, though.
it is. I When I sat down and was really kind of trying to tap into the energy of this, the kind of theme that I kept coming up with all of this feminine energy, is that there is a divine feminine quality to this moon. Um, and I think that it's important when you're working with this moon, because of course full moons, we're always about kind of deconstructing and taking stock of things and seeing what needs to be changed or healed or worked through or reprocessed, or whatever it is. um, that it's kind of a really really good moon to cut yourself some slack, um, and notice and the divine qualities that you have. I mean, every person, we come to this earth to have this earthly experience, but we are in fact, we're spiritual beings. And I know there's a quote that goes around like, we're spiritual beings having an earthly experience. And so you're not expected to come into this environment and be perfect. Like
No.
as a spiritual being, you really already are perfect. Like you're here to make some mistakes and have these experiences, and know what it is to have to work through things. Um, and you can hold yourself to a high level and have high expectations for yourself, but you also have to give yourself the grace to be able to make mistakes
Yes.
and to not have perfection.
I totally agree. And that's what I was finding. It was a lot about the mind, body, and soul, and making sure that what you're doing is really a gift, and you're not weighing yourself down and holding yourself back, by not really giving into what you're supposed to be divinely doing.
Yes, absolutely. I think a lot of times Virgos are so worried about making a mistake that they tend not to necessarily move forward,
Yes.
or they're too scared of being judged that they don't put forth their authentic self.
Hmm.
And Pisces is, they're complete opposites. They come in
Yeah.
and that energy is like, I am who I am, and if I'm a hot mess, I am going to be the best hot mess. There I
There
am,
is.
and I'm going to own it, and I'm going to do my best and put my full heart into everything. And they do.
Hmm.
And Virgo has a huge heart too, but it's definitely in a much more guarded fashion.
Yes. Well, I mean, that kind of comes with that Virgo energy anyway. I feel like, when you think about like the signs for Virgo, it's very like, harvest related usually, and,
Mhm.
feminine. And with that, there's like that toiling work, right? That they
Yeah.
always seem to
Yes.
have to do. So, what else have you seen coming up? I mean, I found, um, as when I was looking at the full moon, I noticed that there was like a quincunx to Saturn, and it's you making, adjustments in your life and really looking at your schedule. Um, and that was a key thing when I kept, looking at the different astrology around this full moon, was really about like your routine and establishing a routine that really benefits you, like mind, body, and soul, versus, which is kind of like a fake routine. When you think about you do things that make you unhappy. Um,
Mhm. And I think we've talked about that the last couple of moons too, is that a lot of times we tend to do things out of obligation or because we
yeah.
think that we are supposed to instead of what feels good to us. And so I think that that's just another element of being like, hey, look at why you're doing things, make the adjustments for what it is that you really want to be doing and what feels good to you. And even like the little tiny routines that you can make that can eventually make a huge impact on, your daily life overall. So,
Oh, I completely agree. That was, you know, I think we have this big calling to really make, um, room for it, like a pretty big change that's coming up for us.
mhm.
And it's whether or not, you embrace the change, and you make room for it, so you're not kind of shocked when it comes.
With all the energy we've had, I feel like the world is changing at a really rapid pace.
It is.
And it's kind of like, it almost feels like, this big tornado we've been swept up in, and everyone's trying to speculate where it's going to go and where we're going to land. Um, and especially with all that Aquarius energy, it was like this really rapid moving, like, I'm still kind of reeling from all that mental energy
Yeah.
that was being thrown around. And not knowing like there's so many different directions to go. And so now we're settled into, we know the Pisces moon. And then one of the other aspects that I saw was that this moon is, it's trine Uranus uh, in Taurus.
Okay.
So yeah, so Taurus is at 7 degrees, um, or Uranus is at 7 degrees Taurus, and then it's trining the moon, which is at 8 degrees Virgo. So that's a really close trine. And trine is really positive energy. And with both of these being in earth signs, it's kind of giving some stability to where we are going. Um, Uranus is kind
That's
of,
nice.
yeah, wants to come in and shake things up and move things around. So it's been a big player. It's a 7-year energy, and we're only 1 year into it. So it's going to be interesting to see where it goes. But having this kind of like moment to have this settling in and making things a little more comfortable, it's really, really nice right now because I think
Mhm.
we all need it.
Yes, I agree. For whatever reason, I don't know if you've gotten anything on this, is it keeps coming up to me that, and I realize like we're in a cycle and every year you have that end of the zodiac, which is Pisces.
Mhm.
But for whatever reason, it's being very like prevalent. Um, and that's what keeps coming to me is like there's some sort of cycle ending with this. And I don't know if you've gotten anything when you've,
With the Pisces.
yeah, with
So
the Pisces.
I feel like things, we talk about the moon cycles and how I know I mention this every time, but in case this is someone's first time watching, a moon cycle can either be 2 weeks from full moon to new moon or new moon to full moon. And then it can also be like from, the full moon in Pisces to the next full moon, which will be in Aries. I mean, no, those are new moons. New moons in Pisces to new moons in Aries. So through one whole sign. Or it can be a year-long cycle. And if we look at what was happening a year ago, it was right before everything changed for the whole
Yeah.
world. Um, and so I think that the fact that we're completing this year out cycle, it's allowing for this next cycle to begin.
Yeah.
And we're still kind of seeing what that's going to look like, but it's going in a much more positive direction than it was a year ago,
Hmm.
um, which is is really nice to see and really nice to hear.
Yes. And I don't know if you mentioned it before, but all the planets are going to be direct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we just we're recording this a week before the full moon. So Mercury just went direct today. So we've all survived this last Mercury retrograde, which is wonderful. Um,
Yay.
so with Mercury going direct, um, that means that all the planets are now moving direct. And that doesn't happen very often. And we have 2 months of all the planets moving in a forward direction. And so that is going to give us
Really
some
good.
time to put all of these plans into action and have them flow easily, to kind of like create some kind of project or start something new that you've been thinking about. It's kind of like you finally get the go ahead to propel yourself forward, and it's going to be something that happens very kind of without a lot of effort.
Hmm. Oh, I like that.
Yeah, with how much I know for a lot of people, it's felt like a big struggle the last
Yeah.
several months, and a lot of people feeling really unmotivated to do anything. And now we're kind of getting that boost to start like propelling ourselves forward again.
Hmm.
Uh, so I'm really excited about that as
Yeah.
well.
Me too.
Because I kept saying, like, I feel so stuck. Like, it's like I'm not getting any direction on where to go and what to do. And for being myself, someone who's very future oriented and wanting to kind of like always see a couple steps ahead and not be able to see that for myself, like, I
Hmm.
really had to sit in that and try and make that feel a little more comfortable. It's not a comfortable feeling for everyone. So,
No, I'm with you, Amy.
yeah.
These
Yeah.
last couple of weeks have been real hard, but yeah, I would say there's been a lot of kind of stuck, or just things not maybe falling into place. We've talked about like intuitively when you think about your life and things that you manifest in it, that there is, this opening that you leave out to the universe to bring in what it is able to provide best for you.
Mhm.
And, you know, you yourself need to put your energy in the right forward motion and making sure you're requesting the right thing. But, sometimes you're doing it and you just feel like you're like banging against a locked door. And even though you're supposed to be going through this door, you can feel the calling for it. A lot of people have just been like stuck,
Mhm.
um, and not moving. I kind of feel that too. So,
Yeah. There's always a sense of divine timing
yeah.
that happens, especially with when you're trying to manifest something new. And one of the most frustrating things is when your perceived timeline doesn't match up with what the universe's timeline is.
Mm.
You're like, but I need this and I want it now. And you're being put in this place where you're having to be patient and work through and kind of sit with where you are first. Um,
Yeah.
I totally get it.
Yeah. Well, and I think it helps now that we're out of Mercury retrograde too.
It does.
For
That's
whatever reason, I'm
energy to start big projects or make important decisions.
no, it's funny. I was waiting for, information from my publisher and I was like, and then today they were like, back and forth, a whole bunch of things. And I was like, oh, just had to wait until Mercury came
Uh-huh.
direct.
That's exactly what it was.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I mean, when we are working with full moons, I always tend to take it as a time to have an overall look and take stock of what's in my life now and to have a moment of gratitude for, you know, what is going on and what I've experienced. And when I was looking at this moon, I felt like a lot of what wants to be noticed right now is kind of like a little more gratitude for yourself and who
Hmm.
you are. Mentioned I kept hearing things about, this kind of like divine nature of yourself, um, and paying attention to all of these qualities that you have that are really um, genuine and who make you who you are and that are in alignment with spirit. I think sometimes we tend to forget, and
Yeah.
especially with Virgo energy, because Virgo, one of the things that I always think about with Virgo is that they have this inner dialogue all of the time that is kind of their big inner critic.
Hmm.
Um, and and it's interesting because when we switched into Pisces season and we were getting closer and closer to this full moon, I kept hearing my Pisces friends kind of start almost like saying things like, I wish I wasn't a Pisces, or,
Oh,
I always hated the way that I am, or kind of like really looking at some of their more negative traits. And
oh, interesting.
yeah, it was really interesting because I have a lot of Pisces friends and I love them dearly. And they never speak badly about anybody. Like,
Yeah.
that's one of the things is like, they will be so honest with you, but they will be honest in a way in which they are not speaking badly about a single person. And
Hmm.
so to hear them start saying things and getting down on themselves, I was like, what is going on? Because it's not their true nature. And
Yeah.
I really encourage everyone with this moon to kind of like look at what your true nature is. Like when you step outside of your earthly body and your earthly physicality and all of the things that you're having to deal with, and expectations that you have of yourself while you're here and what you consider to be perfect or right for you, and like take yourself outside of that and look at yourself from a spiritual perspective and all the ways in which you're aligning with your true nature. So
Yes. I completely agree, Amy. And it's, that in itself is refreshing. So
mhm.
to like relieve yourself of the fakeness or the false self that you've projected upon yourself. So,
Yeah, and I heard one. I love quotes and I collect them, and I know I always have a couple to throw at you all. But one of the things that I remember hearing when I was working on my own healing journey is that your inner voice is the things that you heard your parents say.
oh my gosh, yes.
And I really started looking at that because, I was a pretty confident kid.
Mhm.
um, but it's really interesting the things that you are hard on yourself about. And um, just to share a little bit about myself and to kind of give this an example, like I was I was a really smart kid. Like, that was one of the things I always heard growing up was, you're so smart, you're so smart. And then if I ever did anything wrong, the thing that was said is, you're too smart to be this stupid
Mhm.
or to make this kind of mistake. And and I didn't realize it at the time, but it created in me this level of perfection that I had to have, that if I didn't do things right all the time, that meant that I wasn't smart. And since that was such a big quality that was placed on me to be, it was almost like this kind of like, well, who am I if I'm not smart? And if I make a mistake, then I'm not smart. And so there's like all these expectations that we end up having for ourselves that are based on some of our childhood experiences. And with all this divine feminine energy that's coming in with this moon, it made me think that it's a really, really great time to kind of like go in and nurture your inner child a little bit
Mhm.
and take some of that criticism away and let that child be a child and love it. And, you know,
I completely agree. I mean, it's amazing. Our parents are obviously all flawed individuals. And when I think of myself at this age, which was the age of my parents, I'm like, I don't know anything.
yeah, they were all trying their best.
Yeah, they were trying their best, but the words and even the ones that are positive have, this interesting effect on our psyche and
Mhm.
um, who we define ourselves as. And it's kind of, scary that, that's so embedded in us and we don't even a lot of people don't even realize it.
Mm-mm. No. And it's another way that I really recognize that words have power,
Hmm.
and we give them a lot of power,
We do.
as we should. But you have to be able to go back and look and realize what is truth and what is a projection or a perception of somebody else
Hmm.
onto you.
Yep.
Um, and so, but I mean, I don't think I always joke with my daughter because she and I have a really good relationship, and she's 11. But I always joke with her that at some point or another, no matter what I do, she's probably going to end up in therapy for something I did or
Oh
didn't.
yeah.
Like, I don't think there's no such thing as a perfect parent. I mean, you do your best and you try and you hope that you do okay
Exactly.
in the long run.
I completely agree. There's no way you're going to be perfect. And even if you think you're living a perfect life, um, that in itself might cause, you need to go see a therapist and talk about your perfect life.
Yeah.
So,
Or do some shadow work, which
uh-huh,
um,
exactly.
is kind of what we do every full moon, but it's a term that's been coming up a lot for people lately. And I've seen a lot of people ask, like, well, how do you do shadow work? And what is shadow work? Um, and in the most simplest term, shadow work is when you take a look at some of the darker aspects of who you are and what makes you you and try and deconstruct them and figure yourself out and, learn to love yourself in those places that may not seem so lovable to yourself.
Yes.
So it's some
So,
deep inner healing.
I like it. Should we talk about the activity for this full moon then? Since
Yeah.
it's
So
right on topic.
this is an activity that I've done a couple times in Circle, and it's actually one of my favorite activities. Um, and so, if you want to participate in this activity, I'm going to tell you the first part of it, and then I um, will hope that you kind of like take a chance to, and I would suggest that you go ahead and turn off this recording and then come back after you've completed the first part of the activity. So, the first part of the activity is go ahead and get a sheet of paper or your journal, or whatever it is you want to write in. And at the top of the page or in the center of the page or wherever you want, put in big letters, I am. And then take some time and go ahead and write out on this paper everything that you are, whatever comes to your mind. And then when you're done, go ahead and turn this video back on. Okay. So if you have your page all written on with I am, now the next part of this is to go ahead and take a look at the things that you wrote and notice, are they kind of like roles that you play? Because a lot of times people will put, I am a mother, I am a sister, I am a daughter. They will put, I'm a teacher, or all of these things. Um, and that is a big part of, who you are. And then the other thing is to notice whether or not the things that you wrote, if you used any adjectives for yourself, if they're more on the positive side or more on the negative side, and how you feel about it overall. Um, Usually, when I do this exercise with women, you get an interesting bunch of responses, and they're all kind of varied, but a lot of times it'll focus on all of the roles that they play,
Mm-hmm.
and someone else will focus on all of the things they wish they could change about themselves. And someone else will put like all the positive things and leave out all the negative. And so it's just kind of like a good exercise in looking at who you really are. And is
Mm-hmm.
what you wrote on your paper really who you are? Or is it just like things that you think about yourself?
Yeah. Or
So,
that kind of like that fake identity that we've created for our lives
mhm.
to fulfill that voice that we
Yeah.
had from childhood.
Yeah. And that brings up, there was one other aspect that um, is happening right now. And I didn't dive too much into it because it's Chiron, which is an asteroid. So it's kind of a minor player, but it appears in everybody's chart. And it is significant. It does have its energy that affects us. Um, but Chiron is considered the wounded healer, and it's the energy that comes in to kind of give us the experiences that are not, that have kind of this deeper um, wound to them. I mean, I know
Yeah.
it's a wound
Yeah.
healer, so it has a wounding to it. There's something about it that's going to make your heart ache.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but it's coming in to kind of bring it around so you can heal that aspect of yourself more deeply. And I'm going to throw another quote at you, but it's another one.
I
Well,
like it, so go for it.
um, but the wound is where the light enters you.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't necessarily illuminate certain parts of yourself unless you have the experience of having that wounding in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
And Chiron has a really long cycle. It takes it nearly 50 years to go through all the signs. And so what's happening right now, and I'm not exactly sure what the cycle is it's completing, but it is completing out this minor cycle that started last April. And so whatever was happening in your life where you were feeling like kind of like
Yeah.
traumatic or traumatized, it's coming up to a completion of that, and you're kind of graduating from that lesson. So whatever that
Ooh.
is for you, take a look at it and see.
Yeah, that's a good point. I should go back and
There was a lot happening in April.
I know. There's just been a lot happening this whole year, Amy.
This whole year was pretty traumatic overall for a lot of people,
Yeah.
but especially those who were really resistant.
Mm-hmm.
So
I agree. That seems to be the key is just embrace, you know, the ride or jumping off the
yeah.
cliff.
Well, that's one of the things I love the most about paying attention to the astrology and the energy
Yeah,
cycles is because you can align yourself with what it's trying to do instead of fight against it.
exactly. Yeah. If you don't know that there's kind of, harsh energy or there's dreamy energy or whatever it is that's affecting you right now, and then you're kind of trying to combat like that instead of
Mhm,
just embracing it and going, okay, what am I supposed to learn during this time? Am I supposed to relax? Am I supposed to work harder?
mhm.
Those sort of things. So, yeah. Well, thank you, Amy, for joining me. And thank you, everyone.
It's